need to go ahead and staff has identified, which is the Wentworth Greenway, to build a bridge and connect it to McPhee Park. With that project, we'll have $200,000 total if we put $100,000 in this year's budget and add it to what we did in last year's budget. And then finally, we have land acquisition of $500,000 proposed in this year's CIP. So overall, the CIP, funding-wise, looks good. This year's CIP specifically has expenditures of $1.9 million, revenues of $1.7 million, which 1.5 of that is transferred from the general fund, and we'll be pulling $211,000 from reserves in order to balance this year's CIP out with plenty of reserves for future years. And the final thing I wanted to talk about tonight was our other funds, and we don't have a lot of funds anymore, but a couple of them I wanted to talk about. One is state street aid, and this is where we actually do our repaving program throughout the summer and spring. This year, per the state, we're going to get $26.65 per person for improvements, which comes out to roughly $500,000 for that. We last year supplemented that a little bit with some extra money. We plan on doing that again with a transfer from the general fund of $120,000. So we plan on having expenses in that account of around $700,000 in order to get as much paving done as we can, to try to stay on schedule as best we can. So at the end of the year, what you should see is that State Street Aid will have a fund balance of $87,000. The capital investment fund I just talked about of $6.6 million. We have an insurance fund of $526,000, which we do not plan on doing anything with this year. The equipment replacement program, we do plan on transferring $150,000 from the general fund to the equipment replacement fund, and I believe we have equipment to purchase this year of roughly $105,000. So a little bit of residual will be there for future years to replace equipment. And finally, we have $11,000 left in the beautification fund. So with that, we do have a balanced budget. We do have revenues, obviously in excess of expenditures, which we certainly strive to have every single year. And I will be glad to try to answer any questions the board has.
Service industry or a lot of service. What is the correlation of the town's population to our expenses through the years? You had that one chart earlier that showed the expenses slowly rising. Is there a correlation to our population?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at that specifically, Alderman, but I'm sure that as population increases, as service demands increase, there would be a slight increase in that, but we can certainly get that for you and show you at the next meeting what that looks like. There would be one difficulty with that would be the census doesn't come along but every few years, so it's hard to go every, say, 4 years or 3 years when you do a special census unless you do some kind of extrapolation, but we can do that.
I have a question on page 21, item number 254, professional services. There's a big jump of from 80,000 to 175,000. Is this just a result of the different way to count things, or what?
Well, what happened was we put money in this year's budget to do our land use plan. We put $50,000 in FY11 to do that, and I think we quickly realized that wasn't going to be enough to do that project. So we have dropped it out of this year's plan and added and put up to $100,000 to do that next year. I think we'll be able to certainly do it for less than that, but that's the reason why you see the jump in price. Other than that, it's the same contract we have for the fire marshal to do his services for us, so nothing else has changed.
Okay. And then on page 51, I must have written this here simply because there was a big enough space, but I think I noted somewhere in here that our employees who receive a car allowance are also charging per mile. Is that right?
I don't think so. What page are you on there?
Well, I wrote it on page 51,
okay.
But that's not about that in that page.
No, sir. If employees receive a car allowance, and there aren't many of us that do, basically you get your car allowance and that's it. You don't get any mileage or reimbursement or anything like that.
And there was a term used somewhere, benefit adjustment. What is that?
Yes, sir. This year, we have in our personnel rules and regulations that employees can actually buy back some of their vacation time throughout the year. And this past year, we did not budget for it in a separate line item, and that's what we're doing this year. We don't necessarily know who they'll be or when they will do it, but we kind of have some that tend to do it more often than others, so we've tried to balance that out as best we can and put that in the budget for this year so we know what that expense is going to be on the front end.
So what do you mean buy back vacation?
Basically, they have the opportunity to buy up to a week or 2 weeks, 2 weeks of vacation per year based on a lot of criteria that they have to meet. They have to take vacation in order to also buy vacation. So usually it's your employees that have been here a few years that have some vacation build up there. And it may not happen every year. It may happen once every few years when they build that vacation time back up. But they do have the opportunity to buy back or buy, I guess you could say, a couple weeks of vacation, which then comes off the books. They no longer have that anymore.
David, I've got a couple comments and a couple questions, so I'll try to make them quick. First of all, I think you did a great job on the budget, and I personally thank you for the extra time you spent with me to walk me through some items. One comment on that's not in the budget, but it was on your slide. It is in the budget, but your comment was on the slide. The 4% pay increase, I do support that, and I would call that a transition number. That's my term, because that certainly is, it's probably double what the going market is today. But in light of what we're trying to do, I mean, definitely in light of what we're going to do for the staff, I will support that. But it is important, and I know you've already done this, but it's important that the staff remember they don't waste this opportunity. Make sure you take advantage of that match. Don't take the money and run, if you will. Make sure you put some of that money away. Second thing, in regards to the capital improvement program, as you stated, as we add more parks, we end up with some more expense, and there may be some other things we do as a community in the future. And this could already be done. When we look at adding some of the capital improvements, those that are going to have ongoing expenses, has that historically been part of the discussion? I'm just going to pull numbers out of the air. Okay, we're going to build a new park. Is it part of the discussion? You know, we estimate in addition to the $1 million we're going to spend in a park, it's probably going to cost us another $50,000 to $70,000 a year to keep it going. Is that part of the process? Not having been through that, I'll ask it this time.
And not knowing past processes, I'm not sure how it used to be done before I got here. I know working with Mr. Palmer, as he's in charge of the CIP now, that basically every department head, when they put in their request for projects, have to put in there what they think the operating expenses per year will be, if there will be any at all. So we do have a vague idea what those numbers will be. Obviously, until you get into it, you don't really know for sure, but we can estimate pretty well.
Then I'll move to page 37 and get into some specifics. First of all, I am a big fan of public transportation, and it serves our country well, and it has served me well during travels. However, when I look at what we are as a community giving to CAT, and when I say CAT from this point on, I mean the amount we're spending on the park and ride lot, including the $40,000 that we've allocated and for the last 2 years have given to KAT. I struggle with that. And it's not that I'm not a fan of public transportation, but even if I double the number of people I believe are utilizing that bus, we're spending, you know, $1,500 a person. That just seems like a big number. So I'm going to offer this. I would like to see us eliminate the $40,000 for the pure CAT part, leave the 14, I guess it would be 14,670 for this coming year for the park and ride lot, because I don't have any problem with that, and again, I do think we have an obligation to support that service. That is still going to be $700 to $800 a person using that service. I'm a huge fan of schools, and I would argue all day long, every day, that schools are the #1 economic development tool in any community. I love what the town of Farragut has done for the last several years, and I applaud this board and previous boards for giving these additional dollars to the schools. What I would propose to this board is that we take the $40,000 and instead of giving it to CAT, we do this. I love the idea that you've put in here of giving $10,000 to the Farragut High School Foundation. I realize, or I mean, word it differently, I know that this fall that Hardin Valley Academy will also have a foundation up and running. I would recommend we take $10,000 of the 40, do a line item for the Hardin Valley Academy Foundation, take the remaining $30,000 and give $6,000 additional to each of the principals for the 5 schools. So we would have then, going to the schools, $10,000 Farragut High School Foundation, $10,000 Hardin Valley Academy Foundation, and $16,000 each to the principals at Farragut Primary, Farragut Intermediate, Farragut Middle, Farragut High School, Hardin Valley Academy. I would much rather use $40,000 to benefit 7,000 people, those being the students, versus, you know, 1,500. And again, that's if I double it. We're probably paying $2,000 a person to subsidize what I've seen for CAT. And I have been down there. I've went down there. I do think we need to continue to support the park and ride lot, however. But those comments in this proposal, that's all I have at this time. So thank you.
Well, that will require a vote if we're going to change it. So who has questions?
Question, Mr. Smoke, in terms of, do we have an update on those numbers from the CAT riders in terms of what impact that would have on the number of people that use that?
I know we did a lot of studying on that early in the year. Gary, do you remember at all what those numbers look like? Yeah, I'd have to get that for you at the next meeting, Alderman. We did a lot of studying on our own about how many cars were out there per day and things like that. I know we've asked CAT for some numbers recently, and I don't have those off the top of my head, but I can get those to the Alderman so you can see those for the next meeting if you'd like to see those.
Was there not an issue that was raised about the park and ride lot in terms of who was using it relative to, you know, I think we had originally, the intent was to support the CAT ridership, and I understand that TVA people were using it or something like that. Where are we with that? Has that been resolved, or is that still an ongoing issue?
It's an issue, and it's going to continue to be an issue probably in perpetuity with the gas prices the way they are. And the fact of the matter is it's a public lot. It's paid for with public funds, and we really can't, even if we could, I don't know how we would, but we really can't regulate that and keep people from, the public from parking there. We've kind of tried to empower the users to kind of get together and have a quasi-formal group that may either petition local business owners to allow them to park there, or to speak to the folks that are eating up all the spaces to see if they can work out some sort of alternative. But it's not illegal, and there's really not anything we can do about it.
Jeff, I would offer to you, just as an observation, during my visits to the park and ride, I got down there at about 6:15 one day, 6:30 the other. Over half of that lot is full with not CAT riders. And I'm guessing here a little bit. Is there 50 spots there? There can't be many more than that.
It's probably close to that. I don't know.
So I'll estimate 50. Over half of them are full with non-CAT riders. The rest, it averaged, during my observations, okay, non-scientific study, there's an average of 20 people a day getting on that bus. And I'm guessing, just kind of eyeballing license plate, about a third of them are not from the town of Farragut. So, I mean, let me word it differently. They're not from Knox County. I'll state that.